Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Story to Screen podcast, the movie podcast where we review all different kinds of movies, new and old. I am your host, Chris, and joining me tonight for this episode is Ian Maffitt. Hey, Ian, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you doing, Chris?
I am doing fine. Had a bit of a kind of a boring day at the office, unfortunately.
Well, sometimes a boring day is better than a crazy hectic day.
The problem was that my partner was sick for the day, so I had to mind the phones and messages and all that stuff, so I was kind of, I was all on my own, but even then, I still had to wait for a while just to get the next set of messages in my lap.
Hooray.
Anyway, well, you've been kind of a little bit of a busy little beaver yourself. I mean, you just recently helped run VBS at your church. How was that?
Goodness, it was a lot of fun. We did Cave Quest this year and had a magnificent stage setup. But I made the mistake of doing skits, handling video and photography for the whole thing. So it was, that was crazy. I'm still recovering from that.
Oh man, I'm sure you are.
But it was awesome. I think the kids loved it, and we had a good crowd. So,
all right. Are you going to be doing like a special like end of the year or like some sort of like special video for the?
I've already put out all the videos. I did a daily video and photos for each day. So, if you're interested in seeing them, check out Living Hope Kennesaw, Georgia Facebook page. They're all up there.
All right. Be sure to check all that stuff out and kind of see Ian's personality, because who knows, you might be able to meet Ian and the rest of us live in person, because as of this recording, this is our 90th episode. Woo-hoo! And we are 10 episodes away from the big 100.
Dun, 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 dun.
After 3 years. I can't believe it. It's been like 3 years since I started this podcast.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I realize that.
I know. And it was actually just last year that we reached our 50th episode. I kid you not.
We're just taking our sweet time, you know?
I know. Now we've done 50 episodes in about almost a whole year. So I guess that's the time. Anyway, folks, tonight's movie review is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Flame and fury of the frontier, the Old West lives again as only John Ford can recreate it. People with wonderful characters who have become legend in their own time. Of them all, two are the most memorable: Liberty Valance and the man who shot him.
That's my steak, Valance. You heard him, dude. Pick it up. I said you, Liberty. You pick it up.
And the man who shot him was justifiably destined to become a hero. Yet, strangely enough, only one of these people could be sure he knew the identity of the man who shot Liberty Valance.
Now, you stay out of this, Donovan. He's been hiding behind your gun long enough. You got a choice, dishwasher. Either you get out of town, or tonight you'll be out in that street alone. You all heard him say he had a gun in his hand, didn't you?
I didn't say that.
That ain't murder, Mr. Marshall. That's a clean-cut case of self-defense. Now get out of my way. This time, right between the eyes.
What you just heard was the original trailer for The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. It was directed by John Ford, stars John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart, which, interesting fact, this was the first time that these two finally worked together in 1962. So they were way past their prime, and you can kind of tell that in this movie. Anyway. So Ian, I guess I'm going to start with you. What's been your relationship to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance?
Well, this is probably going to sound crazy, but I'm pretty sure this was my first time watching it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I know other people like Westerns was just a huge part of their childhood, but my family wasn't really that into them growing up. So, we watch a lot of the Jimmy Stewart films, It's a Wonderful Life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we didn't really dive too much into the Western. So now that I've seen this, I really need to go back and rewatch the John Wayne films that I have seen before and the ones I haven't, because I really enjoyed this. It was just a very well done movie.
Okay. And what did you think of it? I mean, what were your kind of initial impressions of the film?
Well, I guess now that we're used to the rapid cuts and the super fast paced action, it took me a little while to really get into it. But because, like you said, Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne are kind of past their prime in this one, it's kind of more of a slow moving story and relied more on dialogue than action. It took me a while to get into it, but once I did, I really enjoyed it because, obviously Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne are fantastic actors. And, there was obviously a lot of thought put into the script. So I enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah. When did I see this movie? I was unlike you, Ian, I was a big Western fan. I think that was kind of like my exposure as a kid, more so than like superhero movies or action movies of the 80s. This was my go-to genre. I mean, I loved watching, the Searchers, a lot of those old classic Westerns. And I remember precisely like this one very fondly because I just remember just the imagery of John Wayne and this shadowy kind of atmospheric tone. It kind of had this old noir type of feel to it, which was kind of rare for a movie like this to have. But yeah, it was just that it had that kind of classic film noir look, and which was again kind of rare. And what I liked about it was that it was this movie about. It's almost like a biographical. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation for that word, but it almost feels like it's a movie that's deriving from the point of view of John Ford, who's at this point in time in his career, he's kind of coming to the end of his cycle, if you know what I mean. By this point in time, he had won 4 Oscars. He had directed what many would consider the greatest movies ever made. The Grapes of Wrath, The Searchers, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, The Quiet Man, etc. And also, I think this movie is also. This was also the final, the second to last collaboration between John Ford and John Wayne. They did like 16 films together, and This one I think feels very appropriate to end that collaboration on. But yeah, I think it's just the characters. Like, honestly, it's a movie that I can watch anytime, and when the movie's over, like, I'm just kind of sad because I won't be spending time with these characters. And that's the interesting thing that this movie does, or even like with any John Ford movie. He creates these characters that you spend a small amount of time with, but you're somehow drawn to them. And that's a trademark of Ford's, and I think that's something that would later be carried on with Spielberg. But Ford makes that has that feel in this movie. I mean, do you kind of agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. I think Ford was the ultimate master in really fleshing out characters. I mean, like you said, like you come to know, you feel like you know the characters on the screen in his films, like on a one-on-one basis, because they're so well fleshed out. Other movies, it's sometimes hard to really get in, even if it's a well-done film, sometimes it's kind of hard to establish that feeling of really knowing the character. But in Ford, as a director, of course, he also picked magnificent actors who could take on characters, really deep characters like that. But Ford, as a director, was really good at having those actors really get into that role and not just act, but like become those characters.
But also providing a sense of just a likability.
Yeah.
Whether it was Henry Fonda in The Grapes of Wrath, John Wayne in one of those, in all the westerns they did, he manages to create these really likable, if not approachable, protagonists.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, and then you look at this film, and then you look at Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne, and both two of the greatest screen legends that you could ever in film history, and they work so well together. And
yeah,
even though there's this conflict of the past versus the future kind of personality dynamic, there's still a likability, there's still a respect for one another, even though they're kind of colliding with each other over social justice and improvements and within the justice in that society, and also the core conflict is also kind of who gets the girl type of thing going on there. But did the fact that you could tell that these were older guys and they were kind of paired with a much younger actress, did that bug you at all, or just the fact that they were older at this point in time? And do you think they should have gone with younger actors, or do you think this was perfect choice casting for this film?
Well, I think it was a good choice because I think John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart really settled into those roles, and also that was just a point in time in Hollywood's history in which, well, it was kind of on the tail end of the point in time in Hollywood's history in which you always had older men paired with younger women.
Yes, unfortunately.
I have no idea why that is. It was just something with the culture at that point. You look at Clark Gable and, well, any of his leading ladies, and he was usually much older. But in this case, I don't know. I don't think I really noticed that much. I think she carried herself with enough grace and maturity that it wasn't even noticeable.
Yeah, it didn't bug me. It is kind of like it is kind of obvious. Like, okay, yeah, these pair of guys are much more older, but I didn't find it to be like a flaw against the film per se. I think this is actually probably one of the least flawless westerns I've seen. I mean, it's probably one. It's pretty perfect in my opinion from beginning to end, and I like how. I like it. I mean, I really like Jimmy Stewart and his ransom-starred character, and the fact that he's trying to bring in law and order to this society that honestly just has no law at all. I mean, it's. I just, the fact that he's kind of coming into. He's out of his element. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, at the very beginning of this movie, when he's beginning to tell the story of what happened to him and. When he was younger, you can definitely tell he's someone that's completely out of his element. I mean, he has no idea the kind of this wilderness, the Wild West that he's dealing with or anything like that. He is dealing with something that cannot be easily broken or tamed or anything like that. He has to kind of go along for the ride, for lack of a better term, and kind of witness for himself that in order for law and order to be properly established, it has to take time. It might mean getting your hands dirty, which I think that's kind of the realization that he comes to terms with at the end of this film when one of his close friends gets hurt by Liberty Valance, but. I kind of liked his arc and the fact that he's also not only dealing with bringing in the social order, but also realizing that he has to kind of get his hands dirty in order to do it. I mean, he thinks he kills Liberty Valance. Spoiler alert. But then he kind of has to come to the fact that he didn't do it and whether or not he should tell people about it. I don't know that which we can talk about that a little later. But what did you think of just the ransom starter character?
Well, it's the classic wide-eyed idealist paired with the cynical what's the word I'm looking for? Man of the world. There we go. Cynical man of the world who just wants to get by. So I love that part of it. In fact, I think the fact that he just kind of steps into the story and we don't really have any background other than the fact that he's a lawyer and he's from the East, like, I think that adds to the whole, like, he is a newbie in a world of men and women who are used to dealing with the worst of weather and the worst of mankind. And, I think that added really well to his character arc, and it really helped. It helps the viewer get in touch with who he is early on, and then it really helps when he gets to that point where he's just like, okay, I can't just sit back. I have to actually do something. And even though he didn't really actually do that thing, the fact that he got to that point is, that's him coming a long way from what he was at the first. Yeah.
He's basically kind of almost in a way kind of embracing the manhood of the West, so to speak, somewhat, but also still maintaining the virtues of the East, I guess,
Yeah. It's that pairing of the idealism with harsh reality. Mm-hmm. Like, and he doesn't lose that idealism, but he comes to term with the harsh reality.
Yeah. Now, I never, until like the very end when he's shot and all that stuff, and when Hallie's dealing with his wounds, I never got the sense that he was falling in love with her until that point. Because a lot of people have kind of said, like, wait a minute, when does he truly fall in love with her? Is it that point? But I guess the way that I took it in terms of the relationship between Ransom and Hallie was based on kind of a mutual respect. This girl who honestly has no education, who can't read or write, and she comes to contact with somebody who's, much more sophisticated, and I think there's I don't know if I would call it love, but I think there's definitely a deep sense of gratitude on her part. I mean, did you kind of take it that, like, when do you think she finally fell in love with him, or do you think she fell in love with him? Well, I don't know how to say this, but do you think she fell in love with him for the wrong reasons, or do you think she fell in love with him for the right reasons?
I think it was the right ones. I think, starting off, and this is where Vera Miles, her acting ability really shines, because she went from a just cynical girl who's just dealing with day-to-day life, and it just thinks, the whole reading thing is unnecessary and doesn't want to deal with it, to admiring Ransom. And I think that's where we're at about halfway through. But I think you're right. I think that point at which he got shot, and he's coming to terms with what he thinks he just did. And she looks up at him, and those gorgeous eyes are staring at him, and that's the point at which it's like, okay, that's it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, you can almost see the that's what I'm looking for. But the chemistry right there between those two actors is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that was entirely intentional, because, right then I think we're led to believe that's the point at which they really fell in love.
Yeah. Okay. But I still get the sense that she still had, even like at the end, when they're there at John Wayne's, Tom Donovan's funeral, I still get the sense that there's maybe regret on her. I don't know, like, maybe because she's playing an older woman, and I don't know, there's just something in her eyes that seems to signify that there's a certain deep regret, or even like a sadness that maybe she wasn't there for him per se. I don't know. It's a very interesting.
I'd probably call it nostalgia. I mean, I don't think it reflects poorly on Vera. I think it's hard for younger people to really understand what it's like for older people to look back on the past and think about what could have been. So I think that may have been where the actress really struggled with that part. And, that may be really only one of the only negatives about this whole film is her kind of shallow approach to that mentality. Not really shallow, but just maybe an inability to really grasp and get into that role of an older woman who's come back to where she grew up.
Yeah.
And fell in love. Because, I think throughout the film, when Tom's kind of flirting with her, she kind of pushes it off to the side and doesn't really give it much attention, aside from, annoyance. So I feel like her as an older woman looking back, it's more, thinking about what could have been and what did happen. And, I have that kind of tinged with this nostalgia. So, yeah.
I mean, the John Wayne, it's kind of funny you mentioned flirt. I mean, there is, like, thinking about it now, he is definitely flirting with her, but it's a very kind of affectionate type of flirting, as if, like, I really like you. Well,
almost an older brother kind of thing.
Yeah, well,
but not quite.
Yeah, but I think it's older brother. That's funny. But the fact that I did get the sense that I think she was really attracted to Donovan or Tom at that point in time. I think it's there until Jimmy Stewart comes in, but I don't know if she had the same feelings that John Wayne had or Tom Donovan had for her. Let's talk about John Wayne in this movie, because I think he gives probably one of the best performances of his career with this film. He's given the tragic hero character, which was kind of not typical at that point in time for Wayne. I mean, he was always the all-conquering, American hero, and he would take down the Japs and the evil cowboys and all that stuff. But he's he's the unsung hero. I mean, literally in this film. I mean, he's the one that he kills Liberty Valance, but
Yeah.
he doesn't get the credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the tragic nature of his character, is that history does not remember him. He's forgotten. You know, he's the thing that people have moved on from. People don't remember anymore. I like that. I like that, but it's the sad thing about him, and I think that's why I was kind of drawing that parallel between, you know, this movie kind of being a biographical statement from Ford, because I think I do see a lot of Donovan Ford in the Donovan character, actually. You know, this guy who holds, you know, with these moral ideals from the past, and the world that he knows is changing around him, and he can't. It's progress. He can't halt the progress, and I think that kind of mirrors Ford's mentality at this point in time in his career, and I think the John Wayne character kind of positions that very, very well. Interesting fact, though, him and Ford and Wayne did not get along during the making of this movie at all.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Apparently, Wayne was foisted on him by the studio, and I don't know, if I were Ford, I don't think I'd mind it too much, but
yeah, but I mean, like, who else could you get to play that role?
Yeah, I know, right?
I know, and you know, there was like a lot of colliding between the two. I don't know. I think it was like I don't know if it was creative issues or.
I think Ford was just kind of being a jerk, from what I read.
Yeah, I've heard weird things about John Ford, the man, not the director. One thing, the man, a bit of a pain in the neck, from what I'm aware of. But yeah, I mean, do you kind of see the parallels between the Ford and the Wayne character?
Yeah, I can see that. You know, I think it's a tragedy only really for the audience in a way. Because I think at the very end of the movie, you see you see Stoddard, you know, he's in the train, he's going back to DC, and then, you know, they've already said they're coming back, and then someone says the man who shot Liberty Valance. And you see that look in his eyes like, oh, dang it. That wasn't me. It's like, I'm not the man who should be getting the praise. Mm-hmm. But, you know, looking back at the film, Donovan didn't care. I think that character was such that he was such a cynical man of the world, and really only cared about getting the job done and just living day to day and just surviving. Mm-hmm. And so I think he was far more interested in letting Stoddard get the praise and glory, because he could see that was right, that this was a man that needed to be at the forefront, that needed to be a leader. And he saw that, like, there's no way he could do that, ideally. And so he let Stoddard get the praise. And, you know, he was just one of those guys like, all right, cool, I'm going back home now, you know? Yeah. And I think even just the fact that he didn't even rebuild his home, you know, I think that says a lot. That it was just like he didn't care. He
became a wanderer. I mean, you don't really know, but I guess you get the sense that he was a wanderer. I mean, the fact that he got a really kind of a pine box, not the most handsome looking thing in the world, and I mean, and the fact that, I mean, you look at even like when they bring out his spurs and his boots, I mean, you can tell that this guy was probably wandering for the rest of his life. You get the sense that he was a wanderer after that. And
well, you know, there's that point in the story in which Stoddard and Hallie are you know, sitting there in the classroom, and he walks in and is like, dude, I've been gone for 3 weeks. Like, what have you been doing? You know, so that I think underscores what you're saying, and that he was a man that just kind of not so much went with the flow, but was a wanderer and just kind of went his own way.
Yeah, and the thing here's the tragedy. I think that the character, the Donovan character, is now underlooked. At this point in time, because do you think if he had been acknowledged as the man who shot Liberty Valance, what do you think that would have lent? Do you think he just would have been built on a reputation that, oh yeah, he's the man who shot Liberty Valance, but he wasn't giving anything to society? With Rance, he's giving society, the things that it needs. Donovan wasn't that he wasn't the visionary at all. Stewart was the visionary individual. Do you think if society knew, what do you think would have happened? That's the one thing I've always that's boggled my mind is, what if society did know that Donovan was the man who shot Liberty Valance? What would have happened then?
I would imagine that Ransom would not have gone on to do what he did, because otherwise, maybe he would have done some of those things, but the fact that people ascribe to him, the title of the man who shot Liberty Valance, that was kind of the driving factor behind his success. And like you said, he was a visionary, and Donovan was just the local rancher who's just doing what he does and wasn't a visionary and just was a hard, cynical man, and probably would have withdrawn even more, because at least from my perspective, he was just that guy that didn't want to deal with that kind of attention.
No, and I think he was even at the election scene, he was kind of a nominee to represent the city, but he turned down the vote because he says, I have other plans.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And you can see that towards the end too, when they're talking about the delegates. You've got that one guy who's standing up and trying to cast aspersions on Ransom, and Donovan walks in, and on Ransom, when he walks out, he's like, look, here's the deal. You didn't shoot the guy. So you basically, you don't need to carry that guilt. I'll take it. You go back in there, do what you need to do. I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
But here's the sad part. He doesn't get the girl. He doesn't get the right guy who gets the credit, or the guy who is the right guy who does kill him doesn't get anything at the end. I think that's even the bigger tragedy. Like, he does shoot Liberty Valance, but what does he really get at the end? He kind of gets nothing, unfortunately, and by choice too.
Yeah, and I imagine for him, it was probably more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not appealing, but it's probably more satisfactory for him, for Ransom to get that praise and go on and do what he did, than for him to get the praise for that.
Yeah. Was there like a scene? Was there any like other scenes in this movie that just really stood out to you? That was like, oh my gosh, I just love this moment. I can tell you what it is. My favorite scene is actually the restaurant scenes.
Those are very good scenes.
Yes.
I did enjoy those.
Yeah, and the steaks look amazing.
Right?
Every time I watch those scenes, I'm like, my mouth is just watering with like, oh my gosh, those steaks look amazing. And
steak would taste really good right now.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, believe it or not, I did get some big broil steaks actually a couple of weeks ago, and
nice.
Yeah, for like $4.99 a pound.
Oh wow!
I think I got like 10 pounds worth for like $4.99. It was like, oh my gosh! But it was the best steaks ever. So, especially like when I had one for breakfast with the egg. Oh my gosh!
Oh man,
I'm making us hungry.
I know, right? I just ate too, and I'm getting hungry again.
Yeah, I had bacon and toast and waffles. Oh my, yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, that scene really gets to me. And those pies. Oh my gosh, what the heck did they do with that? But yeah, that restaurant scene, I just love those scenes, and I and even that scene where finally like the three of them, Ransom, Stoddard, and Valance, just We gotta talk about Liberty Valance. You know, he's like the main. He's the main title, or he's his name's in the main title. But what a great villain performance by Lee Marvin. You know, Lee Marvin's just like one of those like guys. You know, you just love to hate him every time he plays a role. Even the bad guy role, you just love to hate him every time. And I think he even gives one of the most underrated villain performances ever, in my opinion, because when I don't see him on the lists anymore. I don't see, like, people talk about Hannibal Lecter or Anthony Perkins from, you know, Psycho. I think he ranks amongst some of the greatest film villains ever. I mean, he's there, like, just the way he plays him. There's like almost like this human deformity. I mean, he's not physically deformed, but there's almost like a deformity to his body and to his spirit. I mean, he's the bad guy, but you just sense it. And there's like an animalistic quality to him that you just despise. I mean, did you get that at all? I mean, what did you take away from like the Liberty Valance character?
He is just, and I think Lee Marvin did a great job in kind of underplaying him a little bit.
Really? Okay. I thought he was kind of really out there a little bit at times.
Yeah, well, you know, at times, yeah, but I think it was necessary for the character, and it really wasn't overly dramatic. It was just, this is a guy who everybody hates and who hates everybody, but is kind of power hungry, and is just kind of a nasty, dirty animal.
Yeah.
That no one really wants to cross because they don't want to get bitten. And he does it. I mean, especially, I don't know, maybe it's just the way he carried that whip. They were just it was like, look, basically kind of this is my my scepter, if you will. And I'm going to pound you with it if you cross me.
I love that. No, that's a great point. I love that.
And so, you know, I don't think in that final scene with him, he had that with him.
I think he had it at the side. But, I mean, he never used it as a means of combat other than a means of punishment. I mean, but I think I liked how you did say underplay. I think he does underplay the lethalness of Valance.
Yeah.
It isn't until, like, you see him, like, whipping the dude. I mean, he whips, you know, Peabody. He whips Ransom Star at the beginning. He has that, you know, fight with him. And just the stories you hear about this character. You again, it's one of those things where, you know, you don't show, but just you tell, but you don't show.
Yeah,
I think that's was that what you were referring to in terms of the underplay, in terms of the deadliness of the character? Because I guess that's what I'm getting a little bit more from the character, even though you do get the sense that he is a deadly foe.
Yeah,
indeed. Well,
it's like that. It's like he's got that anger simmering under the surface.
Oh yeah.
And it just kind of explodes when someone crosses him. You know, like we see in the scene in the newspaper office.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I think that's really where Lee Marvin's ability really shines, because he's not just like over the top like all the time. It's just like he just has that look in which, like, it's like the character's basically begging people to do something, you know? Just that mean, nasty look of, okay, come on. Yeah. Try it.
Yeah.
And just ready to, like almost like a cobra, just ready to pounce.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like, and that's like, he's like, there's that scene where, again, at the office, and then Peabody comes in, lights up the lamp, but he's hunched. He's like hunched over like the press maker, and, you know, there's the way that he's looking at him. He's looking at him like he's like this. He's like the prey, and he's, you know, the hunted. It's just this monster, And I love how you compared it to an anger. Yeah, there is an anger to him, and there's a violence to him that you're just so afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, and like, but he's also playful. Like, he'll play with his opponents. Like, I remember, like in his final shootout scene, they grab the gun and all that stuff. He grabs his gun, and he's playing with Stewart. He just shoots at his arm. He shoots at the gun. He shoots at the lamp, and at the same time, he's just laughing. He's laughing at him, and it's just,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Lee Marvin just this character just needs to be recognized more so as a movie villain. I'm sorry, it just needs to be.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I know it's ranked up there with like some of Marvin's finest performances, but it just gets ignored, and I think it's criminally underlooked. But gosh, I'm just trying to think of something else we can talk about with this movie. Was there anything you kind of took away from this movie that you felt like that kind of applied to? Well, let me say this actually. Kind of, I was going to say modern society, but thinking about this now, it's interesting when you watch this movie and you have this killer on the loose, and he's killing innocent people and homesteaders and all that stuff for whatever this kind of shadowy organization that we don't really know much of. You find out that he's actually working for somebody, but you really don't know 100% who it is. I watched this movie and I couldn't help but kind of draw the parallels of what was kind of going on in our country recently. Like this past week, we had a lot of killings.
This was a depressing past week.
Oh my gosh! Like every time I turn on the TV or like got on my computer on the news headlines, there was just like killing in Orlando, Florida, and this gay club, and this singer who I don't remember from The Voice. Poor little thing. I mean, my gosh, she was murdered by a fan. There was also a British politician who was murdered as well, and I think there were a couple.
The kid who got dragged into the swamp, the water, by an alligator.
By the alligator. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then just on a more local level, there have been a lot just in my church that have lost loved ones real suddenly. So yeah, it's been a really dark week.
Yeah, and and I think there's been I know there's been more. I mean, what I've just mentioned, I think there's a lot more killings that have been going on this past week. I kid you not, and it's funny. You watch this movie, and this was a movie that's about the violence that was necessary for a better future, so to speak. And here we are in a civilized society, and these horrible acts are still going. I mean, you still see these horrible violent acts that people are just enacting upon people. And, look, I mean, religiously, it's sad what happened to the people at that gay bar. I mean, it's sad because I will not say that they deserved it. I will say that they have my sympathy because they didn't come to know the Lord and His true grace and His mercy, and these people who kind of lived their own lives, without God. There is a sadness to that. I'm not trying to come across as someone that's condemning people for your lifestyle. If you choose to be gay, that is between you and God. I'm sorry for saying that. It is the truth. But yeah, I mean, I just watching this film, it just kind of drew a lot of those interesting parallels that this was a point in time in American history where, violence, the untamed West, we were still trying to bring law and order to this country, and now here we are over hundreds of years, 200 years later, and we're still trying to establish order. I mean, it's just the wickedness in man that's doing this. I mean, did you kind of see a lot of the parallels between that and?
Well, I think my perspective on it is, you have one of the main characters played by Jimmy Stewart, who is reluctant to resort to violence, and violence is the absolute last resort. But that doesn't mean he's not willing to do it. I think we're in a point in time where a lot of people think violence is just never, ever, 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 ever acceptable. let's talk it out kind of thing. And I think Lee Marvin's character, Liberty Valance, kind of signifies that evil that we're seeing. And, you've got the townspeople who really just kind of want to cope and just kind of want to pretend it doesn't exist when he's not around. And then you have someone like Ransom Stoddard who walks in and wants justice, and he wants it done the right way. But then he sees that violence is the last resort, and he's willing to do it. In large part because of people like John Wayne's character. And so it's kind of antithetical to the predominant viewpoint we have today, in that, we should talk it out always. And, war is just never an option, and guns are evil, yada, yada, yada. I don't mean to offend anybody, but, this whole Islam is a peaceful religion thing, parentheses, read the Quran, please. Mm-hmm. I think this is a poor reflection of the today. It is really, in a way, a devolution of what the kind of principles that were held to even in the 1960s, in which, war sucks and we don't want to do that. But if it's necessary in order to curtail evil, then we should probably do it. There was still that willingness, and now we don't really have that anymore. Obviously with the added, you bring in the biblical worldview to it.
Yes. And
it is sad with everything that's happened. I mean, but there's that point. This is bad, but I don't remember where exactly. But in the Gospels, someone asked Jesus about a bunch of people who died while trying to build this tower, and Jesus' response was basically, "Yeah, we all, not we all, everyone, every man deserves that because of sin." And so, I've seen a lot on both sides of just the completely wrong response to everything that's been going on. But really, none of us are really the good person. None of us are really the good guy without Christ. So, in a way, you could kind of, well, I don't know if you really could pull out a Christ figure from this film, but it does kind of change the perspective with that biblical worldview pulled in. In that, we want to preserve life. We want to value life. We want to respect the image of God in other men. But sometimes evil and sin step into the picture, and there's really nothing to do. It comes to a point which that has to be punished, and something needs to be done. So anyways, that's long story short. That I don't know how to compress that.
No, I mean, I think,
but yeah,
honestly, I'm gonna just say that that's a great way to wrap up the show. I mean, that's just what you just said right there. It's a great way to kind of, in other words, well said, Ian,
Thank
said.
You.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, you know the rest of it. I went to Washington. We won statehood. I became the first governor.
3 terms as governor, 2 terms in the Senate, ambassador to the court of St. James, back again to the Senate, and a man who, with a snap of his fingers, could be the next vice president of the United States.
Well, you're not going to use the story, Mr. Scott?
No, sir. The
This is the West, sir. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
He's right, Rance.
I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up because I don't know how to follow that. But anyway, yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So, well, audiences, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Story to Screen. We do, send our condolences to the people who did lose their lives and to the families that were affected by these killings. We hope that these acts of violence will lead those who were connected or responsible into the ways, of Jesus Christ. We really hope that people will point to Christ in the situation or turn to Christ in the situation. And I'm really seeing none of that at all with some people. A lot of people have actually been quickly to blame Christ or God or to really turn their backs on Christians in this situation, oddly enough. I've seen a lot of articles about that lately. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Ian, again, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And audiences, stay tuned. We are on the road to 100, so please keep an eye out for the next couple of episodes. We've got a lot in store, so stay tuned, guys. Joshua will be doing Finding Dory next week, so stay tuned for that review. So
Sure, that's going to be awesome.
yeah, I'm sure he will do a good job. Anyway, folks, have a good night and cheers.
Later.